Hey y'all, it's been a minute since I've been here on YouTube channel with a video that's like this, but I definitely told a member of Discord that for Christmas I would get them a 2023 year-end recap video, so here we are. Here's a list of several of my favorite things from this year. Let's take a look. Alright, so first off we're going to start with my favorite piece of tech, which, it's not a new piece of tech for me. I think particularly because of, wanting to be more intentional about how I'm spending money and, getting upgrades for tech. My consistent favorite is my iPad. This is a device that I use fairly consistently. It's got my script notes on it right now. I use it for not just content creation, but also my full-time job that pays my bills. I also have Apple Arcade right now, which I'm ending because I don't use it often enough. But Slay the Spire is definitely free on Apple Arcade, which is a really nice thing. And I just really generally like having it around because I also have the Apple Pencil, which allows me to take notes or just doodle if I'm in the mood for it. And so I think consistently for 2023, my favorite piece of tech was probably my iPad. It's a couple years old, but still works really well, and I have no complaints about it. I think it's an iPad Air, if I'm remembering correctly. So it does work with second generation Apple Pencil, which is really nice because then my pencil is always charged and with me. And then I have the keyboard case and just a regular folio case, so I switch that out depending on what I'm working on. And it's just a piece that I find myself reaching for fairly often. Also, there are months when I don't use my iPad a ton, and I think it's important to just also acknowledge that yes, this is a thing that I find helpful, and it also takes me being intentional about using it to create content. Alright, next up we have my favorite board game of the year. This is a hobby that I've started to get into, mostly because I found a lot of cool projects on Kickstarter that made me really excited about board games, as well as trying to find more hobbies that aren't connected to a screen, because sometimes we need to just not be on a computer to be a little bit healthier as people. So I've started to get into board games, and so the favorite one that I have for this year is a game called Flamecraft that released I think earlier this year. They had a Kickstarter either this year or the year before, but I finally got to play it and got my hands on it this year. It's a really cute game, as you can see in this little preview picture, where you just get to have dragons that you're working with that runs shops. And so you go around and visit the different shops to just have more dragons in your hand or be able to cast spells with them. And it's just a really cute game. There are many different components, especially as someone that's not used to more complex board games. So I would definitely recommend watching some different how to play videos as you're getting it set up, because I found that to be really helpful. But it's a very cute, just chill game to play with friends. It also has a solo mode that I haven't tried out yet, but I think I'm going to be trying that out next year. So I would highly recommend Flamecraft. And then a second close runner-up would be Steam Up, which I think I was at Barnes & Noble over the Thanksgiving holiday, and I think it got Barnes & Noble's 2023 Game of the Year, which is really cool. But that's another Kickstarter that I backed, where you play a game where you're trying to make dim sum, and so you the board actually rotates like a dim sum table does, and I think that aspect of it was really cool. So I would definitely check out Steam Up as well. Another hobby that I've started getting into is tabletop role-playing games. So a lot of folk mostly know this as Dungeons and Dragons, but there's actually a ton of different options that you can use for TTRPGs. And so I think my favorite one from this year was honestly Shift. It's a new system coming out by Hit Point Press and a team that's working with them on it, and it's essentially built on a system of shifting your dice depending on successes or failures. And so if you fail, essentially your character may partially succeed, but there is a consequence to it. And I think from a storytelling perspective, it is more engaging to me than D&D is sometimes, just because you get to have more creativity on why something didn't fully work the way that you wanted to, and the consequences aren't necessarily just, oh, you got hit for 10 points of damage. It's narratively, I think that there's more that you can put into that, as well as exploring the toll that it takes on your character if they're trying to use a magic ability, why something maybe didn't work, or what effect it has on your character. So I had the chance to play this system with Stella Luna on their channel over on Twitch. It was a series of 3-shot series called Undertow. I had a ton of fun playing it, but I think that something that was really cool was seeing how different people like built out their characters, because a really interesting thing on Shift is that you actually pick like a keyword and then 2 like, I'm forgetting the word, they're like sub words on it. So like, say I was playing a character named Jax, a lot of hers was just like influencing people, and so I had one that was like clear the way, and I think one of the words was like push, and so you really get to like build up the magic or the abilities that your character have based on the words that you pick to associate it with. And I think that was a really cool way to see how like people would pick like specific but kind of vague words so that they could use them in different ways. And so like that concept is really cool and allows for a lot of extra creativity to be like, well, I have this spell and this word is attached to it, but I'm kind of thinking about using it in this way, and kind of getting the chance to convince the DM to just like let you do the cool thing if it sounds cool enough and if you can make a good case for it. So I definitely recommend checking out Shift. I think that they're still building towards like releasing the full 1.0 version either next year or the year after, but the quick start guide is just up on Hit Point Press's website and you can download that for free, so I would definitely recommend checking that out. It was a very fun system to play, and I'll have the link to Undertow down in the description if you're interested in checking it out. I don't think I've talked a lot about this on this particular YouTube channel, but I really enjoy reading. It is a way that I think that I like refresh myself, just as it disconnects me from the world for a little bit, but I think also allows me a wider range of seeing what people's experiences are. I didn't do a great job at reading this year because admittedly 2023 was kind of a rough year for me. My job was not super fun a lot of the year, as well as just like some personal stuff that I was going through. So I didn't read as much, but I think that a couple books that found me that ended up being my favorites of the year came towards the end of the year. I think my favorite one from this year was honestly A Psalm for the Wild Built. It's a monk and robot book, and so essentially it's like a world that like robots decided one day that they like didn't want to work for people anymore, and instead of humans being like, well, that is really unfortunate, we're still gonna make you work for us, that collective of humanity was just like, bet, like that makes sense, we're not gonna like make you do labor for us if you're not interested. And so the robots essentially just like packed up and left to go live in the wilderness, and then like humanity figured out how to continue existing without robots. It follows the story of a monk who is trying to just like essentially figure out what they want to do, and so they eventually like decide that they are going to go out into the wilderness because they're searching for the sound of crickets. And in their like adventures of trying to find their way through to where this place is, they run into one of the robots that like is interested in reforging the connection to humanity, and the book kind of follows their like path of trying to just like meet a bunch of different people, but also just like understanding where each other is at in their lives and like figuring out what they want to do and like how they want to exist in the world. And I think that this book was really, really important for me when I read it, and I would definitely recommend checking it out. I think something that I also really appreciated about it was that it is like at base a hopeful book. Like I feel like a lot of tendencies with books like this is that like a robot uprising tries to happen and people are just like, no, like we built you, it is your job to like do things for us. And this book instead was just like, let's explore what happens if people were just like, bet, be free. And so I think that that's like a really interesting concept to me, as well as seeing just like the slight solar punk vibes of seeing how this author explored what humanity looks like in a world that like isn't as reliant on like robots to do work for them, and figuring out how people like chose to live post that decision and trying to like be more intentional about how we exist within just like the planet that we live on and the way that we interact with like even fuel sources and pieces like that. So I would definitely recommend checking it out. It is A Psalm for the Wild Built, and this is a little preview. Alright, so to close out, we're going to talk a little bit about games, because I think that I've talked about it on this channel, but predominantly the content that I'm creating right now does tend to be streamed games. It fits a little bit easier into my schedule, just with like full-time work, so that I don't have to like record, edit, and like work on uploading YouTube videos. So my favorite unfinished stream game is actually Sea of Stars. It is a key that I got from the devs over at Sabotage Studio, and admittedly this was a game that I was like pretty interested in, but was a little bit on the fence about because I don't historically like turn-based games. But y'all, this game is incredible. Unfortunately, we didn't get the chance to finish it before the end of 2023, so it is something that will continue into 2024. So if you're interested in seeing the last, like, I think fourth of the game, you're welcome to come and hang out with us on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/pizza_yeti. I'm still nailing down my streaming schedule, admittedly, because my work schedule has changed a little bit, but we're gonna figure it out. And so Sea of Stars is essentially like a turn-based game where you play a group of folk that is essentially trying to save the world from destruction. But I think something that continually draws me in is that my favorite character of the game isn't someone that is like a superhuman. Like, we really fell in love with the character Garl on my channel, who's just like, he became best friends with the folk that have like superpowers, but the homie just really loves cooking and wants to protect his friends. And so I think the thing that was really interesting to me is watching this game play out of, alright, there are these folk that have been training essentially for the last 10 years to like go out and save the world, but they've also become completely disconnected from the world. And so I think the like human element or like the community element that Garl brought in really kept reminding me of, this is why it is important for folk to like try to engage with the groups that they are trying to like save or work with. Because if you don't really know the people or have the chance to build up that compassion or empathy, like, you will just try to get to A to B, from A to B as quickly as possible, and won't take time to understand like what's actually happening in a situation. Also, the music is just very top tier, and the timing system in the combat, like, sections of the game keeps me engaged, as opposed to just being like, okay, I'm gonna menu through to be like, okay, hit this dude, and then just like wait for all of the text to scroll, because that's usually what makes me lose interest in turn-based games. So I would highly recommend Sea of Stars. I think it won one of the Game Awards this year, super well deserved. The soundtrack is incredible. The art of the game is beautiful. If you're interested in seeing the playthrough that I've done so far, I do have a Twitch VOD channel, and all of the playthrough videos are currently uploaded to that, so I'll have a link for that in the description as well. My favorite finished stream game, I think this year, was probably Dredge. Dredge is probably a game that you've seen fairly often around the internet. It's a game where you're like a fisherman who's in this like fairly sketchy area. There's like demon fish in the water.
A demon rock. I've made a mistake. Why? Why?
There's like eldritch things happening. It was a really, really interesting game that I really enjoyed playing. I'm a fan of fishing mini games in games in general. I really like Stardew Valley's fishing, which like most of my friends don't agree with, but I think it's a fun mini game. I liked the fishing minigame in Sea of Stars. I don't like the fishing minigame in Animal Crossing, but it's fine. Sometimes I feel like those fish, you need like godlike reflexes to catch, and that's wild to me. Dredge, I think, does it really interesting because like there is a story that's happening, there's fishing that's happening, but there are different types of fishing that you can essentially do, and there's an inventory management aspect of it. So you don't just like catch a bunch of fish and shove them, just like let them lay on the boat after you catch them. You actually like have to organize them, similar to like weird Tetris shapes in your boat's inventory, as well as juggling that with like the fishing rods that you want to have equipped, or like the headlight that you want to have on your boat, as well as just like what kind of engines you want to use so that it doesn't take you 6 years to go from point A to point B. There are also just like wild characters in this game, as well as just like exploring the idea of what it means to like let people go. So I'd highly recommend checking this out if you haven't. It's not too long of a game, which means that you could probably finish it in a couple weekends, if not a weekend, depending on how quickly you get through things. And I believe I just saw that they released new content for the game, so I think that right now is a really good time to pick it up if you have not yet. Would definitely recommend checking out Dredge. And then I also have tried to be more intentional this year about playing games off stream. This is something that I don't typically get a lot of time to do, just because between streaming games, work, and then just like trying to also have like a social life with friends, playing video games can kind of fall away from that. But I did have the chance to play a few games over the course of this year, so I'll start off with the favorite game that I have not finished that I've been playing off stream, and that's 100% God of War Ragnarok. I think I played the first like new God of War game last year or the year before, and I fell in love with it. Like the storytelling in the God of War game that I played, so that's God of War 4 I think for PlayStation 4, the storytelling was wild. Like it wasn't really what I had expected based on things that I had seen, just like mostly the combat focused videos on YouTube, that I was really surprised and intrigued by the depth of storytelling that is in these games. God of War Ragnarok builds up on that. It's a direct sequel to the previous God of War game, where you follow the adventures of Kratos and Atreus as they like essentially, depending on which character you agree with, trying to find a way around Ragnarok, or trying to just like instigate and kick off Ragnarok and figure out how to essentially like defeat Odin in a way that doesn't also mean the world ends. But I think what's been really like intriguing me and bringing me back to the game, because like it's very difficult, I'm not gonna lie, like I was complaining to some friends the other day because I was just like dying constantly to this one boss because I thought that I had to fight it to make progress in the game, because I forgot that the way that they flag main quests is different from side quests, and I had like found an item during the main quest, so it's just like, oh, I must need this to move forward in the game. Nope. So I just like died a bunch of times and was stubborn about something that I didn't like have to be stubborn about. But I think like overall what really brings me back is just like the idea that a lot of these characters are on some sort of like redemption arc, or just like on an arc of understanding I made some pretty terrible decisions in my past life, and this is how I'm gonna either try to like either right the wrong as much as I can, or figure out how to just like be better in the future. And I really appreciate that context of like, slight spoilers for this, there's a side quest early in the game where like you learn more about the decisions that Mimir made while he was working for Odin, and Mimir is also trying to reconcile with, dang, I made some like really terrible decisions just to try to impress a dude. That was horrible. And Kratos has a line where he's just like, you can't make it right, but you can try to make it better in the future. And I think that that idea is really interesting, is acknowledging that like you did a very terrible thing and you can't necessarily like make that decision right. Like there's no way to go back in time to fix the decision that you made, but you can try to be better about like making decisions in the future. And I think that that concept has come up a few times in this game that has been really interesting to continue to see. So I highly recommend checking out God of War Ragnarok as well as God of War 4, I think. Very good games. Combat is very difficult. They also have like the best accessibility options out of any games that I have played recently. So if you're worried about the difficulty of the game or it being inaccessible because of like how demanding it can be, would definitely recommend checking out just like videos on the accessibility or checking it out when you pick up the game. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about is my favorite game that I finished off stream. That's Spider-Man 2. I love Miles Morales a ton. He's one of my favorite superheroes. I really liked the Miles Morales Spider-Man game that came out a few years ago, so I was really excited about getting back into that world. Admittedly, I don't like Peter Parker's Spider-Man as much, but I think that that's because like Peter and Miles just like interact with the world differently, and I think that that comes through a lot in Spider-Man 2, and that Peter is focused on like the global level of like how do we use either the knowledge that we have or the power that we have to like make the world a better place, whereas Miles actually feels like a part of his community and trying to understand these are the things that I can affect in this space that will make like my community's experience better, and then like moving from there into the larger world. And so I think it's really interesting to see those two pieces at play. Also, just like the game feels really smooth to play. It's really fun just like web swinging through New York City. I think that they did a really good job with that, in that I didn't use the fast travel system super often because I was just like, it won't take me that long and I just get to swing around the city while I get there. So I would like props to them on making a really fun traversal system. And as well as the combat just feels really fun. It is pretty fluid. It definitely, when I would like put the game down and come back, I had to like remember all of the different like combos and things that you can do with the characters. So that is something to be aware if you're somebody that can't like play through a game fairly quickly, and you have to take longer breaks like I sometimes do have to do when I'm playing games. It can be a little bit like rusty to pick the game back up when you get back into it. But it is a really fun game. It is also like, there are heavy points, but like it's a Spider-Man game, so like it's also pretty funny at times. So I would definitely recommend picking it up and checking it out. It was my favorite game that I played off stream this year. Alright, so that's kind of all of my favorites from this year. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I'm interested to hear what some of your favorites were, whether that's books or games or board games or tabletop games. Just kind of like, what were things that you enjoyed about this year? Things that like kind of sparked your interest. I'm interested in hearing more about that in the comments. You can also hit me up on social media or join us for a stream over on Twitch. I am finished with content for the year, so I'll see y'all in January. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure that you are taking care of yourselves, because I know that the world is an incredibly heavy place. We are hoping for a free Palestine and a ceasefire and peace for them. So continue to raise up voices about that as much as possible. I will see y'all in the new year. Take care of yourselves, and I'll catch y'all later. Bye!